to say good morning to all my listeners. This morning, the presentation is going to be on variations in project implementation. And just a moment. All right, just a brief presentation outline. We'll be looking at some introduction, definitions of some terms, as well as looking at variation procedures, possible reasons and causes of variations. We'll also be looking at importance of variation orders. And we'll also look at how to value variations. That's valuation of variations. We'll touch a little on contingencies. And then I'll also show us a sample of the variation order form that we use in Ghana Highway Authority. And of course, there will be a brain teaser, and then I'll draw my conclusion. Ghana Highway Authority undertake projects to either rehabilitate, upgrade, or maintain sections of the highway to facilitate growth and safe movement for the people of Ghana. Now, the projects are prepared using the red, yellow, silver, or short form of contracts. These are books. They are conditions of contracts which allow the engineer or the employer to initiate variations as per the clause 13. Maybe we have some young engineers who might not know what the red, yellow, or the silver book are. Now, the red book is the conditions of contract for construction. For that one, the contractor construct the works in accordance with the design provided by the employer. Now, the yellow book is the conditions of contract for plant and design build. And with that, the contractor designs and provides in accordance with the employer's requirement. And then with the silver book, the conditions of contract per EPC, which is the engineering, procurement, and construction. And that's what we also call the turnkey. And it provides a full equipped facility ready for operation. And then with the short form of contracts, with that, it's basically for small works or repetitive works for a short duration or of a small capital value. Now, most of the construction projects in Ghana Highway Authority are incomplete in terms of design, procurement, contracting prior to the start of construction due to their complex nature. So project properties are determined and finalized during the construction of the project, and changes are accepted during the process. Although the ultimate goal during the planning phase will be to minimize the changes and unexpected situations, it is almost impossible to plan a construction project without subjecting it to change during the construction phase. So any deviation from the scope of work agreed in the contract is considered as a variation in the project. So the scope of work are largely described and broken down into BOQs in the contract document, which usually aid in the valuation of variations. So sometimes it is expedient that aspects of the project are varied before the project objectives are attained. So in that sense, it makes that type of variation a beneficial variation. So some few definition. One may ask, what is variations? Now, variations are deviations from an agreed scope of works, either by an addition, exclusion, or substitution of any aspect of the works. Variation orders or variation order is a written agreement to change the work from that agreed in the contract. So when the works are to be varied, variation orders are issued by the engineer with the approval of the employer. So variation orders are valid only if instructed using the contract specified procedure and medium. So anything contrary to that will make the variation order invalid. Now let's look at the variation procedures according to FIDIC clause, basically the Red Book. Variations are initiated by the engineer at any time prior to issuing the taking over certificate for the works. So after taking over certificate for the works, it is not right to issue a variation order. Now, we're still talking about the procedures. And this is either by instruction, according to clause 13, or by request for proposal. So the contractor shall not make any alteration or modification of the permanent works unless and until the engineer or employer instructs or approves of variation. So I have a flow chart here to illustrate the procedure of variation. And this flow has to do with the instruction by instruction, where the engineer instructs variation by giving notice, and then the contractor executes work, where the contractor needs to make his input, is given within 28 days to provide cost, time, resources, and other implications of instruction to the engineer. Now, the engineer reviews the response from the contractor and then accept or otherwise. And then the engineer adjusts the program as well as the contract price accordingly. Procedure by request for proposal. The engineer requests a proposal by instructing a variation by giving a notice to the contractor. And then the contractor responds with a proposal with cost, time, resources. And then the engineer reviews the proposal and give consent or otherwise. Now note, if the engineer does not give consent and if the contractor has incurred costs as a result of preparing the proposal, the contractor shall be entitled to payment of such cost. So, and this one takes us to claims, but that is not our subject matter for today. There are some reasons for variations, possible reasons, just to mention a few, where we have a technological advancement that brings about a change in the methodology. I remember a project, I was on a project where the contractor made a proposal of using the Tarami retaining wall instead of the traditional in-situ retaining wall. And it turned out to be it reduced cost, you see. So we adopted that innovation that the contractor submitted. And this is a beneficial variation. Then we also have changes in the employer's requirements. The employer may decide that instead of using maybe surface dressing, maybe I'm now changing to asphalt. And this may be detrimental. I mean, there will be cost overrun. Statutory changes and enforcement, where we have introduction of new laws or modification of existing laws, may also bring about some variation to the contract. And changes in ground condition other than the one documented will also bring about variation, and non-availability of specified materials for the project and also bring about variation. We also have alteration to the design. When the design is altered, it brings about variation. Quantities required are altered, as well as the sequence of work, alteration to the quality required. All this brings about variation. Variation may also be deemed to occur, excuse me, if the contract documents do not properly describe the works actually required. For instance, instead of in the BOQ describing an item as provide, place, and compact, maybe it was wrongfully captured in the contract as place and compact without the provision. It also calls for a variation. Variation orders. Now, variation order, as explained or defined, is a written agreement to change the work from that agreed in the contract. And they are mostly issued to improve the quality standard or degree of difficulty in the project. Variation orders also eliminate unnecessary costs from a project in order to optimize or improve the employer's benefit against the resource input by reducing the unnecessary cost. So this makes it beneficial when there is the need to eliminate unnecessary cost from a project. We issue variation to that effect. It also allowed the employer to change his mind on the design. Most construction contract will normally specify the variation instruction must be in writing. So verbal instructions are usually not valid. This is to allay or put to rest disputes. So where we have instructions, variation without it being in a written form to the contractor, it may bring some problems in future. We also have some potential causes of variation orders in construction. And this as looked at, we are looking at the employer-related variation, and then consultant-related variations, and then contractors-related variations. So these are more or less specifics, causes of variation orders in construction. So for the employers-related variation, the possible causes are when the employer changes the scope or the plan of the project, and also when there is a financial problem on the part of the employer, and the employer also makes some changes in the material specification, and also the employer decides to make some replacement or ordered for or ask for replacement for some materials when the project is ongoing. And all this will give rise to a variation. With the consultant-related variations, we have when there is a change in a design or the consultant make a change. In most cases, you will see that the construction works are always ahead of the design. Most of the projects we execute in Ghana Highway Authority, there are times where the construction work are ahead of design. So during execution of the project and all those things, there might be some changes in the design. And once this happens, there will be a need for a variation order to be issued, where the consultant realizes that there are some errors and omissions in the design details. I remember a particular project where there was an error in the design of the piers of a flyover. And the reinforcement size specified in the design was 12 millimeter instead of 32 millimeters diameter. So this was a big error, and once the contractor realized it, so notified the consultant, and this was the change was effected, and this brought about a huge variation. Also, conflict between contract documents. Conflict between contract documents, where we have insufficient details, where the specification says something else, and then the bill of quantities also states something else. It also brings about variation. And then technology change, where new construction methods are adopted to reduce cost. It also, like I mentioned, where the contractor brought an innovative idea of using a Tarani retaining wall instead of the traditional in-situ retaining walls. Consultant may also do what we call the value engineering, where he proposed changes to the design, and if adopted, may accelerate the completion time and as well as reduce the cost to the employer. And also, so this will also call for a variation, and where we have inadequate working drawing details, and where the consultant also lack required data to inform his decision to design during the design stage. So during the implementation stage, when the designs are finalized, there will be the need for a variation order to be prepared. And where we also have change, the consultant may also effect change in specifications. And once there's a change in specification, it also affects the quantities. It affects cost as well. For instance, maybe originally in the contract, 12mm diameter was stated, and then a change of specification to 32mm diameter. This will bring about an increment in cost. The variation to do with contractor-related variation causes. When contractor from during the design stage is not involved, so lack of the contractor's involvement during the design stage, contractors desire profitability. Variations are common source of additional work. Most contractors, where the variation has to do with additional work, contractors desire such variations because it gives them more money. And also where we have differing site condition, which is different from the soil condition that was documented, it also gives rise to variation. Defective work based on error in design. So the contractor has gone ahead to do the work before the design was concluded or completed. So this may call for either demolition or rework. And this also brings about cost, which account for variation. We also have fast tracking construction, where we have incomplete design for the start of work. It may also bring about variation, and the contractor's lack of judgment and experience. So when an inexperienced contractor is given such project where the designs and other parameters for the works are not ready, it may also bring about a lot of errors in constructions, and then other costs are incurred. Now, during variation, we can also not we cannot talk about variation without mentioning valuation of variations. So variations may give rise to additions and deductions from the contract sum. The valuation of variations takes into account the expenses that may result from the variation. Valuations are based on the rates and prices provided by the contractor in their contract, provided the work is of similar nature and carried out in similar conditions. In the event where the works are not of similar nature, the contractor shall propose a rate for review by the engineer. If an omission of any forms, if an omission of any form of any work form part of a variation, and if the contractor will incur or has incurred costs, then the contractor shall give notice to the employer accordingly with supporting particulars. So where there will be an omission and then the contractor realizes that he will incur cost or he has incurred cost, then the contractor must notify the engineer or the employer accordingly with supporting particulars. Now, each variation shall be evaluated in accordance with clause 12, which has to do with the measurement and evaluation, unless the engineer instructs or approves otherwise in accordance with the clause. So a little touch on contingencies in projects, because it is perceived that the variations that occur on projects, we use the contingencies, the amount stated in the contract to offset those variation costs. So we cannot talk, or we cannot give, or we cannot say anything on contingencies. We need to say something about contingency. So contingency in project. Contingencies refer to cost and are amount that are held in reserve to deal with unforeseen circumstances. It is the extra potential cost that you factor into the project budget. And it also acts as a sort of insurance against other unforeseen costs. Now, contingencies provision shall be used exclusively to pay the cost associated with variation orders for a given work and not for any other purpose. In fact, the best case scenario, you won't get to spend this money at all, having planned and used your original budget effectively. So the purpose of contingency. Why do we allow contingency in our contracts? To account for errors and omissions in the contract, and as well as when there's a need to modify the scope and quality of the project. It also helps to cover unknown conditions. We also have to look at how to calculate the contingencies. We may not go into details with this. I have here two approaches. We have percentage project-based approach, which is commonly used by Ghana Highway Authority. And this take a fixed percentage, say a 10% of the project estimate to calculate the contingency. It could be 20, it could be 30. Normally, it is based on some predetermined factors or historical data. And these are influenced by expert judgment and guidelines. So in Ghana Highway Authority, we use 10% for the price contingency and 15% for physical contingencies. And the second approach is the expected value. So this method uses statistics to quantify the impact of predetermined risks to calculate contingency, whereby the probability of the risks is multiplied by the impact cost if it does in fact occur. So I have here a sample of variation order form that we use in Ghana Highway Authority. Every variation order form is supposed to have the project title and the name of the contractor, the address, the particulars of the contractors, as well as the contract number. And also, you need to indicate the number, the variation number on that particular project or contract under consideration, and then the date that the variation order is being issued. The form is in the form of a table where we have the description column, and then we have the estimated omission column, and then the estimated addition column. And when you carefully look at it, the additional bill total are grouped. The total, the summary is brought to the estimated addition column. And then when there is an omission, we bring it under the estimated omission column. Now, at the end of the day, we have estimated net omission or addition. So there are variations where you may have both, where we have the some additions, and then we may also take some or exclude some of the items from the contract. So at the end of the day, there is what we call the estimated net, the net. So it could be an omission or it could be an addition. And then it must also be properly signed by the engineer. This is a brain teaser here, helping us to understand how to utilize contingency sum. A project with a contract sum of 100 million has a contingency which is made up of physical and price, 20 million, and a VO has been issued. Net addition for works, VO number 1 is 9 million, and then VO number 2 is 11 million. And then there is a provision in the contract that you seek employer's approval if effective contract sum will be exceeded by 10%. When would you seek the employer's approval? So by way of a letter calculation, we have the original contract sum, which is the 100 million. You less the contingency provision that we have in the contract to arrive at the effective contract sum, which is 80 million. Then from the brain teaser, we have the VO number 1 as 9 million. So working out the percentage, which is the 9 million over the effective contract sum, giving us 11.25. So with this percentage, we must seek the employer's approval to issue the VO number 1. So by way of conclusion, variation or change order, when for variation and change order to occur, there is the need to effect changes. And then also the engineer or the project manager must give an instruction. The scope and the cost must be agreed at. Program must be updated, the program of works, and payment must be made using contract rates. And then for new items, new rate must be fixed. And then the price adjustment or adjusted in the final. So in conclusion, while some variations are unavoidable, it is wise to minimize potential variations by ensuring that uncertainties are eliminated before awarding contract. And this can be done by undertaking thorough site investigations and condition surveys, ensuring that designs are properly coordinated before tendering. and also ensuring that the project brief is comprehensive and is supported by stakeholders. Thank you very much. Your contributions and comments are welcome.